What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing well out there in the old interweb. And as always, comment, like, subscribe, hit up the Patreon page. Let's get a community of like-minded music lovers together and let's start a conversation. So today, I want to talk about the Georgia Thunderbolts new release called Can We Get a Witness? Now, on my YouTube page, a person that was watching a different review of mine commented and said, hey, love your channel, like what you're doing, check this out. So I told him that I would oblige, and I did. So here we are. So the Georgia Thunderbolts, I'd never heard these guys. They are from Rome, Georgia, which is north of Atlanta, kind of northwest of Atlanta, right in the Appalachian Mountains, right on the mighty Coosa River. So small town, cool place. Been there a couple times, seen a couple good shows there. So yeah, this album came out October the 15th of 2021 and runs 13 songs in 54 minutes. Now, these guys are a 5-piece band. They have a drummer, bass player, 2 guitarists, and a lead singer. Now, let's get into some gear, because that's what we do on this channel, right? So looking into these guys, one guitar player, their 2 guitar players both use Gibson guitars. One is slinging a Les Paul real low, and one is slinging an SG real low. And if you guys know me, I'm a lover of all things Gibson. So there you go. You can't hardly beat a good Gibson. That's just my opinion. So for amplifiers, the one guy with the Les Paul was really cool. He's rocking a Wagner amp. Now Wagner is built by Reinhard Wagner in LA. He is from Germany originally. He started building amplifiers in the late 80s after he serviced one of Eddie Van Halen's mythical Marshall Plexis. I think the Marshall Plexi. Which in that time some other guys had worked on it, but Reinhardt got a chance to work on it, and he decided to build his own amps. Still builds them today. It looked like the cat was playing a Wagner Shiva, but I'm not really sure. The videos, it's hard to get a good look at it. Looks like he's rocking it through a 212 matching cabinet, and I don't see them using any pedals. I didn't really hear anything on the album. I've listened to it quite a few times. And live, I don't really see them click on much other than a tuner. Now, the other gentleman in the band rocking a red SG, which is cool. I've got an SG. I'm a big fan of them. Looks like he's rocking a Marshall Plexi or Marshall of some sort. I haven't really seen it up close. I think it's a Plexi because it's got the 2 and 2 inputs, and they're jumped to give it that real badass rock sound. He may be rocking a 87 reissue or an 86 bass reissue. Now when I say that's not the years, those are just the models. Marshall used 1986 and 1987 respectively for 2 of their model Plexis, plus JTM 50s and 45s and so on and so forth. It's not a modern high gang Marshall. It doesn't look like a JCM, or it's obviously not a Silver Jubilee or anything like that. But I think it's a either a 45, a 50 watt or 100 watt Plexi reissue with the way that he's got the leads jumpered. It looks like he's sending it through a 412 cab into his SG. I think I've seen in a video where the guy clicks on a tuner. So yeah, very minimalist setup, but it works, right? So that's really all you need is a guitar, a cable, and an amp, and you're off to rocking. So these guys are self-described as the next generation of Southern rock. Now, if you've watched the channel, you know how I feel about that term, but I digress. I'm not going to get into that here. They also state that they're deeply rooted into the blues and rooted into like the heavy rock. I hear a lot of different influences, and I'll talk about some of them when I get into my top 3. So speaking of, that's a perfect segue to get into my picks off the album. So for me, number 3 on the album is the title cut. It is Can I Get a Witness? It is the 10th song on the album and runs 4 minutes and 55 seconds. Now with this track, I do hear their like heavier influences like an Ozzy. I hear a little Alice in Chains in this. I don't know if that's an influence for them. I read through their bio on their website, but it's just what my ear hears, like I always say. And the lead singer on this, he gets kind of a Lane Staley kind of thing going on. It's very cool. So that's my number 3 pick off the album. If I was going to hand this to you and say, here, start here. Now, my number 2 pick off the album is called Dancing with the Devil, which is the number 9 song on the album and runs 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Now, this to me screams the Charlie Daniels Band with the opening riff, just the lyrical delivery, the drums. I don't know. To me, it sounds like vintage Charlie Daniels. There's people out there that don't know how dynamic of a guitar player that Charlie Daniels is. And this to me is in that vein of like Legend of Woolly Swamp. Not riff-wise, but just the way the song sounds. And I feel like this could have been an early Charlie cut. Do yourself a favor and dig into some of that if you don't know what I'm talking about. So that's my number 2 song, Dancing with the Devil, the number 9 track, and it runs 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Now, my number 1 jam, like I said, I listened to this quite a few times, and it has to be Lend a Hand for me is the number 1 cut on the album. Dog is the number 1 cut on the album. It is the number 2 song, and it runs 3 minutes and 21 seconds. So for this, I hear some of that Skinner influence. I hear some of the heavier influence. This is the track that's got the Alice in Chains, like Lane Staley kind of vocal influence to it. And I really dig this song. If I was going to hand you this album and say, here, start here, this would be where I would say start. So those are my top 3 off the album. So let's talk overall how I rate the album. Y'all know I go 1 to 5 jams. I have to give this album a 3.5. Now, before anybody blows me up in the comments, let me explain myself. There are a couple things from the album that kind of distracted me from it. Now, let me say this before I get into that. Lyrically, I like what the guys are doing. I like their music. I like their melodies. I like their songwriting structure. It really represents what they're trying to do, right? It's got that Southern rock feel. It's got that heavy feel. And then that leads into my cons. Now, my cons on the album are the drums to me are not mixed really correctly. They're very back in the mix. The vocal is really up front. At times, I felt the vocal could be a little pitchy. And the guitars, for me, are not mixed the way that I would have heard them. And also, when people get into that Southern rock thing with the heavy guitars, the one thing that I point out to people when they listen to, say, Lynyrd Skynyrd, is those 3 guitar players were all doing something different. So it sounded like a unison guitar, but they were all playing different riffs. And that's important when you are in that vein of music. And if you go back and listen to that, you listen to early Charlie Daniels, early Marshall Tucker, obviously the Allman Brothers, you can distinguish guitar players, right? You can tell Rosington from Collins, from Gaines, from Ed King, from Toy Caldwell to Gary. I said Rosington too, Dwayne, and to Dickie. So you could really tell them guys apart. And I'm not saying you can't hear, but there are times when the guitar's muddy a little bit because the guys are not differentiating what they're doing. But that's just me. That's just my ear. This is good jam for rolling down the interstate, rolling down the backwoods, rolling down the highway. I just think, for me, I would have liked to have heard it mixed a little different, and I would had liked to have seen the producer say, hey, why don't we do this a little different? Why don't we do that a little different? But this is their first offering, right? So they're only going to get better from here, I feel. These guys are great. They're fun. But for me, 3.5 jams just because of the mix of the album. If you listen to it, you'll probably hear what I'm talking about. Well, there we go. The Georgia Thunderbolts. Can we get a witness? Check it out. Comment below. Let's get a conversation started. like, subscribe, hit the Patreon page, and as always, music is love, and love is music. Until next time, you guys, keep rocking.